When we're meditating, essentially we're training our mind in the same way that we kind of train our muscles. So if we think about like training for a running race, I'm not a runner. I'm just going to put that out there right now. But the first time we go running, our muscles are pretty taxed from it, right? Maybe we don't get very far and we're very sore the next day. But if we train, right, over and over and over again, what happens? Well, we're able to run further, faster, our muscles recover quicker. Everything about running becomes familiar to our muscles, right? Our muscles are familiar with the exercise of running. And so it becomes easier for us and we can see greater benefits, right? Getting faster and whatnot, right? So the same is true for our mind, right? Training our mind. So meditation is all about training our mind in familiarization, right? So we can train to become familiar with patience. That way patience comes more naturally to us, right? We can train our mind in gratitude. That way the feeling of gratitude becomes more natural to us. We can train our mind in peacefulness. That way we can reduce stress and be more peaceful, right? It's the same concept as training our muscles, right? Except that we're training our mind. Does that make sense? Right? And there's kind of two steps to meditation. The first is relaxing our mind. That's probably the one we're familiar with. So learning how to calm our mind. Our mind is very busy. There's thoughts bouncing around all the time. We don't even realize how busy it is. So learning how to relax our mind and then use that relaxed mind in a productive way to become familiar with something, right? So if our mind is really stressed out and all over the place and not relaxed, it's very hard for us to learn, right? It's very hard for us to take in information and become familiar with things, think critically about something because our mind is just scattered, right? So these two things, relaxing our mind and then using our relaxed mind to become familiar with something, this is meditation, right? These two steps combine into being meditation, right? So first step is to learn how to relax our mind. And the analogy I use a lot for anyone that's here, is if you imagine a very still lake, very calm lake, you can see a reflection clearly in the lake if I asked you to do that, right? And if it starts to rain a little bit, well, now that reflection's a little harder to see, right? And if it really starts to downpour, now you might not be able to describe the reflection at all, right? It's not as clear, right? So this is an analogy for what our mind is like. Our mind, by default, normally is like a still lake, very calm, very peaceful, very collected, very reasonable, thinking about things objectively, right? All of the distractions and stress, worries, anxiety, all of the thoughts bouncing around in our head all day long, they're like raindrops that are falling on the lake. And they're making it hard for us to be calm, right? To be peaceful, to think objectively about the problems that we have, right? Things that normally probably wouldn't bother us if we're really stressed out might bother us, right? A little sound here and there sets us off, right? So our goal with meditation at first is to start to clear away some of the raindrops that are making the lake not still, right? And we don't have to clear away all of them, right? Because even if you were able to clear away some raindrops that were obscuring the reflection of the lake, well, you could see the reflection more clearly. So if we can clear away some of the distractions, some of the stress, some of the worries and thoughts that are bouncing around in our mind, then we can start to be a little more relaxed, a little more calm. It doesn't have to be all or nothing right now. We'll get there, right? Baby steps. So the method that we use to start doing this, to start to relax with meditation, is called single-pointed concentration, right? And all that means is focusing on one thing so exclusively that other things start to melt away, start to fade into the background, right? If you've experienced something like this, if you've ever been in the zone, right? We've heard that before. I'm sure you all experienced that, either exercising or working on something at work. We're like really diligently working on something at work, and we lose track of time. We don't hear people call our name, and all the sounds in our open office that are normally really distracting and bothersome and annoying. It's almost like they're gone, right? It's almost like they're not there. We just do not hear them or see them or notice them, right? Because we're so single-pointedly focused on something, right? So we are going to do this intentionally. Like sometimes we do this unintentionally, but we're going to start to train so that we can do this intentionally. And the object that we use as our single-pointed concentration is our breath. Breathing meditation. You've probably heard of this before. It's pretty common. And one reason that we use our breath as a kind of a starting point for meditation is that we always have our breath with us. So if we become good at using our breath as a way to relax, a way to calm ourselves, a way to focus, we feel empowered that we can do this whenever and wherever, which is our goal, right? Our goal with meditation isn't to just be like, okay, well, I'm going to feel good for the 10 minutes that I meditate, and then I'm going to go back to being stressed. No, it's being able to incorporate this into our life to see actual positive changes from this, right? So the breath is a really good tool in our tool belt, which is why we start with it, right? So we're going to do that now. We're going to do a short breathing meditation. It's going to be about 5 minutes, right? Not anything too crazy. Common misconception about meditation. You do not need to do this for hours or anything like that. We're just going to do this for 5 minutes. From an instructional standpoint, very simple, right? We're just going to focus on our breathing. I'll guide it. You pay attention to what I'm saying. And then when you notice that your attention is thinking about something else, and it will, right? It's thinking about something that happened earlier or something you have to do later after this class. We're just going to be like, nope, not right now. And we're going to bring our attention back to focusing on our breath, right? And that process of focusing on our breath, noticing when we're no longer exclusively focused on our breath and being able to bring it back, that is breathing meditation, right? And over time, we're going to be able to stay with our breath longer, and we're going to start to relax, right? Because all of the things that are normally distracting us, pulling for our attention, are going to start to fade into the background because we have made a choice to focus on our breathing. All right? Does that sound good? Does that sound like a good place to start? I hope so. Okay, so it doesn't really matter where you are. Like you can sit in a chair, or if you're in your car, or if you're laying down, that's also fine. Some people like to sit on a cushion or cross-legged. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that you are comfortable, right? We want to be physically comfortable so then we could be mentally comfortable, right? So make sure that you're not in a position that is uncomfortable for you. And you can go ahead and let your hands just gently rest in your lap or at your side if you're laying down, and you can close your eyes and follow along with what I'm saying. We're going to do about a 5-minute breathing meditation, okay? All right. Whenever we start a meditation, first and foremost, we check in with ourselves. How are you feeling right now in this moment? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you tired? Are you energetic? Neutral? Whatever it is, it does not matter. All that matters is you notice. Notice what your mind is up to. This is called mindfulness, probably a word you've heard before. Mindfulness is an ability to notice what your mind is doing moment to moment, so that way you can skillfully respond. So just notice how you're feeling right now. And having checked in, having taken note of what your mind is doing, you can now turn your full attention to your breathing in and out of your nose. Very gently, very naturally. You do not need to take big, deep breaths or forcefully exhale the air. Just breathe normally in and out. See if you can follow your entire in-breath and your entire out-breath, staying with the sensations of breathing in and out. Keep breathing in and out very gently, very naturally. And at some point, you may notice that your attention has drifted and is no longer exclusively focused on your breathing. When you notice that this has happened, just gently guide your attention back. Guide your attention back to focusing on each breath in and out. Enjoying breathing, enjoying sitting here. Allow yourself to relax with your breathing. In and out, very gently, very naturally. Keep bringing your attention back to your breath as many times as you need to. This is meditation. You, right now, are meditating. You are training your mind to relax, to be calm, to access its naturally peaceful state. And you're doing it all on your own with nothing other than your breath. How wonderful. So just continue to breathe in and out very gently and naturally for a little while longer. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open up your eyes. How'd that go? Anyone new? First time doing that? Maybe it was difficult, right? So a lot of times we start to notice how tough it is to stay focused on one thing, right? Because all day long we are not doing that. We are very much a society of multitasking, right? We're encouraged to think about as many things as possible, right? Do as many things as possible. Oh, had a good experience. Great. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. But if you did find that to be challenging, shouldn't come as that much of a surprise, right? Because we don't do this that often, right? How often do we sit quietly focusing on our breath exclusively? Like, oh, never, right? We're do. Valerie, first time for me. I'm glad. Welcome. Rebecca, first time, hard focusing, but enjoyed it. So a lot of times when we're just starting meditation, I hear this a lot. People will say, "My mind seems busier when I meditate." Right? And I had the same experience when I started a long time ago. And somebody told me something that I thought was like brilliant. They're like, "You're just noticing for the first time how busy your mind is all day long." Right? And I was like, wow, right? That's what my mind is doing all day long. It's exhausting to think about your mind bouncing from thing to thing, right? That's why we're so mentally exhausted at the end of the day, because our mind is doing that unbeknownst to us until we start to actively be like, hey, I don't want you to do that, mind. I don't want you to bounce around. I want you to obey my command of focusing on my breath, right? So it's going to take time. It's going to take time for this to become familiar. There's that word, right? Meditation and familiarity are like synonymous. It's going to take time for us to become familiar with focusing on one thing, right? Third day of meditating, still learning. It takes, meditation is a slow burn. It takes a while, but just in the same way that we have learned anything in our life, be it walking, learning how to drive, riding a bike, how to run, it just takes time. It just takes us becoming familiar with something to be able to start to do it more easily, right? Lolo, it worked. Felt like I was asleep. Yeah, so we start to get this sensation that our whole body is just start to like, right? It's like the sensation we get when we're like, finally lay down after a long day, right? Basically, you're mentally laying down after a long day of having your mind go all over the place, right? So there are a lot of similarities to meditation and sleep, for sure. Great. So if you have any questions about meditation in general or breathing meditation, feel free to ask. I'm going to start talking about our topic, but like you can ask a question on anything. It doesn't have to be on the thing I'm saying at the time. So if anything pops up, feel free to ask me. Randy, I find it easier to focus when my meditation is guided. Should I challenge myself to meditate in complete silence where my mind tend to wander? Randy, what an excellent question, right? So this is a very common question and a very common experience, right? So there's a lot of ways to meditate, right? There's a lot of apps out there right now, like Headspace and Calm. These are brilliant things. Like they weren't like, talk about being grateful for technology. Like it's amazing the types of entry points that we have into meditation, right? But sometimes we can start to feel dependent on the app or the music that we to meditate. Like we feel like we can't do this unless I have this app, unless I have this music, right? So answer is yes. You should challenge yourself to try to do a non-guided meditation once in a while, right? There's nothing wrong with doing a guided meditation. That's why I'm here. But if we start to mentally feel like we're dependent on it, then we start to feel less empowered that we can do this at any time. And the truth is, you do not need me to meditate. You do not need a guide, right? It can be very helpful, especially when we're learning, but it's good to experiment with doing this on your own to see, hey, you know what? I'm having some difficulty doing this on my own. Maybe that's an area where I need to work on a little bit. Randy, that's a really, really brilliant question and very important. So thank you for asking that. Susanna, I was meditating for a while and felt the benefits, but I stopped because of the intrusive thoughts. I am wanting to get back to it. Do you have any tips for intrusive thoughts? So I'm assuming you mean in thoughts that you don't want to bring up, maybe like memories that you do not want to bring up, right? So when we're starting meditation, sorry, my hair is like insane. When we're starting meditation, our first step is to learn how to relax, right? So just like we were doing with breathing meditation, that's your goal. Your goal is whatever thoughts are popping up, whether they be wanted or not, right? We're not saying, I don't want to think about this, right? We're just saying not right now. That's our kind of like mantra, right? Not right now. I'll think about you later, but right now I'm focused on my breathing, right? So my advice when you're just getting started for like the thoughts that keep popping, and maybe it's like a specific thought or worry or anxiety. If you have anxiety, sometimes it can really be like knocking at your door, like, hey, pay attention to me, is instead of saying no to that thought, we're saying not right now. It's a different kind of response for us. We're acknowledging that it's happening. non-judgmentally. We're going to think about you later, but right now I've made a decision to focus on my breathing, right? So we can start to use that as our kind of like go-to saying when we're meditating. Not right now to my thought, and then let's go back. But you're going to have some intrusive thoughts. It's going to happen because for the first time, you're paying attention to what's going on in your mind. Normally, these thoughts are popping in your mind all day long, and we're just like, okay, I'm going along for the ride. Now I'm happy. Now I'm sad. Now I'm thinking about this. Now I'm thinking about that. So when we start to break it down and start to actively, sit with our breathing, there are going to be some thoughts. But this is good. We want to start to notice these things, right? Should I focus on maintaining a good posture while meditating? Wow, these are really great questions. Amazing. Yes. Okay. I have horrible posture, terrible posture. And I got some great advice from many meditation teachers that I was saying, like, sometimes I get sleepy when I meditate, and they're like, it's your posture, right? So you'll find when we're starting to feel a little sleepy at our desk or something like that, we're kind of usually hunched over, right? So if we ever start to feel a little sleepy or dull, we can just check in with ourselves, like, let me check my posture, sit up nice and alert. It's a really great question. Yes. Do you have any active meditations, or are they all seated? I personally on this channel do mostly just seated traditional meditations, but we do talk about different types, and some of them are like movement based or eating, like mindful eating. We did a whole class on kind of unique types of meditations, right? Drinking water, you can meditate doing that. Essentially, you can meditate doing anything if you're exclusively focused on it, right? So yoga, right? A lot of people do yoga. Yoga is like meditation, but your focal point is movement, right? Focusing exclusively on the movements, right? And what happens? You start to relax. All the busyness in your mind starts to, all those thoughts start to fade away because you're so exclusively focused on your movement. So personally, just for convenience in my apartment here, or my house, I just moved into a house for first time, so I'm still calling it an apartment. I do seated meditations, but you can meditate doing anything. Gabriella, you might want to look at, I forget what the title was called. I think it was Creative Meditations for a Busy Day. We did that a couple of weeks ago. That's going to have some really good ones for you that aren't all seated. So that's what I would recommend you checking out, that video that we did. Okay, great questions. Thank you. All right, so I'm moving on, but you can still ask questions. So our topic today is all about happiness, which is a very common entry point into meditation, our wish to be happier. And in fact, happiness and our kind of quest for happiness is really at the core of all the things that we do. Right? If we think about what types of things do we try to be happier, right? Like, have you ever said, like, oh, if I could only blank, right? If I could only insert thing, then I'd be happy, right? Maybe it's something large, like getting a new job, right? Or finding a partner, or getting a house, or not being anxious, some of these larger undertakings, right? If I could only get the new job, then I'd be happy, right? Sometimes it's smaller things, right? If I can only fall asleep on time, I say that. If I could only wake up on time, that's probably more like me. Or like if I could only find my favorite missing earring, right? And sometimes we're not like, oh, if I could only find this thing, then I'd be like happy, right? I'd be like, oh, ultimately happy. But like we think that in our mind, we're like, oh, then things would be okay. Right, then things would be better, right? Like a couple of weeks ago, I'm not that handy, and I was trying to fix our toilet, and I could not for the life of me get this like nut off the toilet, and I'm just like, please, if I could only get this thing off, then everything would be okay, right? So that was my like pursuit of happiness in that moment, right? Kavitha, I sometimes have an all or nothing thinking like this. All or nothing thinking like this all the time, where everything has to be perfect and then I can be happy. This is a very common thing, and actually We all do this, right? And Kavita, that's a wonderful insight, and it's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, because we all start to do this, right? We all start to say, I'm going to do this and this and this and this, and if I can do those things, then I'm going to be happy, right? And we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to think about, has this worked, right? However old we are, we've been doing this for a long time. Has it worked, right? Do we have this lasting happiness that we want? And the answer that at least I come to is, well, temporarily we're happy sometimes when we get these things, right? The new job or the house or whatever, right? So let's take the job, for example. That's probably one we've experienced before. If I can only get this new job, right? We get the job and we're super happy, right? We love our new job. We're like going down the office, even though we're all probably remote now, most of us anyway. We're like, hey, Jerry, we're like in a great mood, right? You know, we're having a great time. We're very happy in our job, right? What happens after some time, right? Well, we start to find something else that we need to be happy. Maybe it's, I have to find a partner, right? Or I have to get this promotion at this job, right? So sometimes this job that was supposed to bring us this, like, that we thought, in our mind subconsciously was going to bring us this kind of lasting happiness, sometimes that becomes the source of our unhappiness. Have you had that experience? I have, right? This job that was like, oh, this is amazing, right? Now it starts to become, this is the problem, right? The same job. It's a complete full circle, right? So there's kind of a pattern here, right? All of these attempts to cultivate lasting happiness, they all have something in common. The commonality is that they're what we'll call external sources of happiness, right? So essentially, the problem or the solution is out there, right? And if I can get it, then I'll be happy. If I could get this job, then I'll be happy. If I could get this house, then I'll be happy. If I could find this type of person, then I'll be happy. If I could find my earring, then I'll be happy, right? It's out there somewhere, not in here or in our heart or mind, right? External. Does that make sense? Another way of kind of defining external sources of happiness, and this is a pretty deep topic for meditation. Sometimes some of the things we talk about here, they're a little more nebulous than the others. But this is a very deep topic, happiness. So all the connections are not being made. That's fine, right? We're just trying to introduce some different ways of thinking and see, like, oh, that's interesting. I might like to explore that a little bit, right? That's what we're looking for. So external sources of happiness, another way of thinking about them, that's a little kind of nebulous, is sources that are that we feel are independent of our mind, right? So let's take the job. I'm really harping on the job thing. I don't know why. Let's take the job. This job is out there. I don't know, whatever company it is. Like there's the company and there's the job. And if I get that job out there, I'll be happy, right? I'll be happy in here if I get that thing out there, right? We do not really believe that our mind, our perspective, our attitude, all of these internal things are playing a role in whether or not we'll be happy. We think, if I get that thing out there, I'll be happy, right? We believe that the job is producing happiness. Does that make sense? Right? It's an external source of happiness, right? I worked with somebody who was having this experience, right? They were a teacher in New York, and they did not really like their job. They didn't like the people they were with and the situation. And one exercise that we did is I challenged her to think about somebody else in her exact situation. Maybe somebody who had always wanted to be a teacher but could never find a job teaching, right? Or somebody who never had the means to do the training necessary to become a teacher, and now they are in this situation. Or somebody who works many jobs, and now they can have just this one job, right? To provide for themselves, right? how would they view this job, the same job that she viewed as negative, right? They might view it as positive, right? Maybe be grateful for it, right? So it's the same job, the same people, the same classroom, the same teachers, everything's the same pay, everything's the same, but two totally different experiences of the same job. So something else is at play here, right? We believe that the job makes our mind happy, but what if it was a happy mind that made us enjoy the job, right? That's the kind of interesting flip that we're looking at today. Right? Looking at how, and we've talked about this a lot on this channel, it's a big topic in meditation, how our mind, the mind we bring to an activity or to a situation, influences the experience of that situation. We all need to work on internal happiness first. Totally agree with you. That's what we're talking about today. And it's a basic segue. It's almost like planned because we're going to get into it, an internal happiness right now, because that's that's what we're getting at, right? And when we think about internal happiness as opposed to external happiness, external sources of happiness, we probably all know the phrase, happiness is a state of mind. Maybe one of you has a sign in your house. It's a very common phrase, right? We all kind of intellectually know that at some level, right? Like we're like, yeah, that makes sense. But our actions don't always reflect that. So we have to start to meditate on these things that we're talking about and see if we can gain some conviction that internal happiness is maybe equally as important, if not more important, than some of the external sources of happiness that we're looking for, right? Essentially, what we're looking to do is cultivate some wisdom. And wisdom in meditation land can be defined as knowing the way things are versus the way that they appear to be, right? So it appears that the job will bring us lasting happiness. If I can only get this job, then I will be happy, right? That's how things appear to us, right? If we don't take time to investigate them or think about them too much, right? Naturally, that's kind of how it feels, right? But we can see through our own experience with having a job, right, that then there's something else that we need to be happy, right? So the lasting happiness that appears to come from the job is actually temporary. Happiness is temporary. External sources of happiness bring about temporary happiness, fleeting happiness. And one of the reasons why we still, to this day, after all of our time on earth, are still unhappy is because we don't want temporary happiness, right? We want lasting happiness. Nobody's like, I just want to be happy for a little while. No, we want to be happy, period, right? We want lasting happiness. Essentially, we're kind of looking for buried treasure on the wrong island, right? We're like, someone's like, hey, there's treasure over here. And we're like, okay, if I can, it's here. I know it's here. If I can just find it, if I can just get this and that and this and that and this and that, then I'll be good. I'll be happy, right? I just have to find it, right? But there's another island, the internal source of happiness island, that we haven't really explored yet. We haven't really committed to exploring, at least to the same extent that we've explored some of these external sources of happiness, right? So we have to start to familiarize ourselves. Just making a comment. Sorry if I did not express properly, because we try to find happiness, as you say, from an external source. How long those things last? Very short. Yes, they are. And interesting about external sources of happiness is we don't know how long that temporary happiness will last, but it is always temporary, right? Because of another deep topic in meditation, impermanence, right? Things don't last forever, right? So familiarizing ourselves with the idea that lasting happiness can come from internal sources ourselves, right? Instead of things out there, is critical for having happiness throughout our life, not temporary, right? Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. You're like, does this mean that I shouldn't try to change my external conditions? No, it does not mean that. Go get the new job, get the house, get the partner that you want, find the earring, get the toilet fixed or whatever, right? But we're doing this recognizing that these changes are going to bring about temporary happiness for us. And we should also start to spend some time working on our internal happiness, right? Not just external. We want to balance the scales a little bit, right? Toshida, why do we want to only be happy? Why not sad? It's an emotion and should be experienced. There's nothing wrong with being sad. Having aversion to being sad is a problem for us, right? We don't want to be sad. So when we do experience sadness, we are upset, right? So topic for a different day, but being able to accept our emotions, acceptance is a huge part in happiness as well. Being able to accept what is happening right now is very important, right? So learning to accept when we're sad. It's okay. Guess what? Sadness, also temporary, right? Sometimes we don't think it will be, but it comes and goes, right? So it's a very good point. We need to start to be accepting of how we're feeling in the moment. But part of the reason we don't like being sad is because we want to be happy, right? This like idea of trying to be happy is like at our core. It's at our core. It's very interesting. Saint Teresa said there are more tears shed over answered prayers than unanswered prayers. Wow, that's powerful. I hadn't heard that one before. I like that. Toshida, is happy content? That's an interesting question. I suppose you could say that. I think contentness is being content is like accepting of your current conditions, right? So sometimes we want to and should try to better our conditions, right? But we can do that like we were saying, knowing that like even if we get those conditions, meet those checkpoints that we feel that we need to be happy, like there's probably always going to be something else that we eventually need, right? So contentness really starts to come from internal happiness, right? So like we can be content and still try to expand and improve our external conditions. It's a great question. Jessica, but they are always immediate and more appealing and keep me dependent on them. Yes. So referring to external happiness. Yes. So this is a very tricky part of this exploration into internal happiness, because the external happiness are very attractive, right? They're pulling us, right? Part of the reason is because we are very familiar with the idea of getting external happiness, right? If I get this, I'll be happy, right? It's kind of like ingrained into us, right? We are a lot less familiar, and in some ways, let's just call it what it is. We don't really believe that fully with our heart and our mind that we can achieve lasting happiness through internal means, right? Right? So we have to start to train in this. We have to start to gain conviction in this, that we can do this. And the first step to doing that is starting to see that we can relax and become peaceful all on our own. Breathing meditation. We just did that, right? Gaining like, I can start to be a little more peaceful all on my own from internal sources without anything going on around me, just by focusing on my breath or whatever I choose to, right? Kavitha, I also find that I can focus on achieving my goals better if I can stop pinning my happiness on that goal. I can enjoy Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So yeah, so sometimes, right, when we're like, my happiness depends on me getting that, then the journey of getting that is not that fun, right? Because we're so focused on the end, right? Right. And if we were kind of less down that road, right? If we more kind of understood this universal truth that external sources of happiness are temporary, right? Well, then the journey there, its ups and downs, we kind of expect that that's going to happen. And like when we get the thing and if it goes away, right, we get the job and then we don't have the job, we're less crushed by it because we understood that this was temporary, right? It's a level of wisdom, right? Knowing how things are versus the way that they appear to be, right? It's beautiful. Thank you for that. Hold on, let me catch up. Internal happiness does not have anything to do with being sad or angry or pissed off. It is something else. Yeah. So sadness sadness is just an emotion, right? Happiness is just an emotion. These are just emotions that we feel, right? Internal happiness is all about believing that we can be happy if we want to. Like if we train in being peaceful, our mind will become more familiar with peace and we will be more peaceful more often, right? Gaining conviction in that. Internal joy or contentment is the best way to define that happiness. Thank you. Yeah, these are wonderful comments. Maybe finding internal happiness, Lola says, maybe finding internal happiness or a state of rest in a state of uncertainty. Uncertainty is we've done a lot of classes on that. Uncertainty is one of the core contributors to anxiety, right? So yes, internal peace is in a lot of ways accepting the reality that life is uncertain. And uncertainty and impermanence, which we talked about a little bit before, are very closely related, right? Things will not last forever. That's impermanence, right? What is that? The things that we get, they're temporary happiness. It's all very related, right? We have to enjoy the journey. Otherwise, it has no meaning in getting there. Yeah. So this is great, right? Like, so we're already starting to pick apart some of the things that we have believed to be true our whole lives, right? If I can just get this, I'll be happy. And even just through this discussion, we're starting to see like, oh, maybe there's more to it. Maybe the journey is part of it, right? Like all these wonderful adages that we've heard and that we've thought of, right? We're starting to see that there's an internal contribution to our happiness. Randy, isn't internal happiness achieved in part by cultivating love for others external to me and not being so focused on myself? Yeah. So, wow, amazing discussions today. Yes. So, and in meditation, a huge part of our happiness is doing things not just for us, right? We should, and we should take care of ourselves, right? We should try to change our external conditions, but also thinking larger is very important for having lasting happiness. Yes, definitely a topic for a different day. We have talked about that. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I'm going to do that next week because I've been wanting to do our gratitude meditation again because it's one of my favorites. But Randy, yes. So thinking about others is a very important part of cultivating happiness, right? Great. Wow, a lot of good discussions today. Thank you for contributing. You want to do the gratitude one next week? Okay, we'll do that. Yeah, that'll be a good one. So just in closing, right? Like, if we can start to change our external conditions with wisdom, knowing that the happiness that will come from those is temporary, we start to almost appreciate it more, sort of like we were saying with the journey, right? And not just the goal. right? And when the job that we get is no longer available to us, or no, it's not, we realize that the happiness that it brought temporarily has expired, right? If we have this understanding, this knowledge, wisdom about temporary happiness from external sources, we're not as crushed. We're not like shocked that we're not happy with that thing anymore, right? So that in and of itself is an internal happiness, right? Wisdom is almost like an internal happiness in some regards. Very interesting. I think you really need to love yourself to enjoy loving others truly. Yes, the two go hand in hand, 100%. We have to be happy with ourselves to be able to feel the capacity to branch out. But sometimes it can be helpful if we're very focused on ourselves to kind of almost force ourselves to focus on someone else and see how do I feel, right? Right? Maybe we forget about some of the things that were bothering us a little bit. I got that advice from a psychologist that I was seeing for personally for anxiety, and I've never forgotten it. He said, if you're feeling extra anxious, try doing something for somebody else. Crazy. Gratitude next week would be awesome. Thanks. Okay, great. We'll do it. It's settled. The people have decided it so. That makes a lot of sense. So you're able to enjoy that external happiness more because you realize that it's fleeting and you recognize that. Yes, exactly. Right? Exactly. Because if we don't recognize that, then like there's a part of us that believes, what the heck? This was supposed to be it. Right? And the cycle is going and going and going. So we're going through temporary happiness. Now we're miserable. Temporary happiness. Now we're miserable. And temporary happiness. Now we're miserable. Right? So yes, this knowledge of this kind of universal truth about external sources of happiness helps us be happy. Right? Very interesting. This is a very, very good topic and relevant with my current read, The Book of Joy. I highly recommend if you want to continue to self-learn around this topic. I have not read that, and I will going to take your recommendation. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of great literature on this stuff and the power of joy and happiness and where it comes from. I'm glad that you're looking at a lot of different sources for this. That's great. It's wonderful. Okay, so I want to do a meditation that kind of reinforces some of these things that we were talking about, right? This is sort of like a visualization meditation. So we're going to kind of start the same way as we did before. We're going to do a breathing meditation, right? Because first step 1, we relax our mind. Cool. Then what? Then we're going to take that relaxed mind and we're going to investigate something. We're going to contemplate something. We're going to learn. We're going to become familiar with something. And today we're going to try to become familiar with internal happiness and the importance of also trying to cultivate internal happiness as opposed to just looking at external sources. Good? Okay. So sorry, I'm talking really fast, but I know I'm going later than maybe most of you would prefer. Okay, so we can sit in a relaxed, comfortable position. You can go ahead and close your eyes and follow along with what I'm saying. Okay. All right. Let's once again just briefly check in with ourselves. How are you feeling now? Different than before? The same? Whatever it is, it does not matter. All that matters is you notice. Take note of how you are feeling right now. And having checked in, you can once again turn your full, undivided attention to your breathing in and out of your nose, gently, naturally. Following each breath in and out to the best of your ability. Allow yourself to relax. Allow yourself to relax into your chair, into the cushion, into your breathing. In and out. And if your attention drifts, just gently guide it back. Breathing in and out. Enjoying each breath. Enjoying sitting here. Sometimes after focusing exclusively on our breathing, we begin to notice some things about breathing itself that we don't normally think about. Some sensations of breathing, maybe how the air feels cool on the tip of our nose as we breathe in, and how that same air feels warm as we breathe out. How our entire body, our shoulders, our chest, it moves with each breath in and out. We're starting to notice some little joys about breathing. How wonderful. How wonderful that we are able to do this. We are able to choose to focus on our breath, to relax our mind all on our own, independent of needing specific external conditions. We can be peaceful. We can do this. So having relaxed our mind a little bit with breathing meditation, we can then contemplate something. And today we're going to contemplate the idea of internal versus external happiness. So just follow along with what I'm saying. I'm going to do a kind of guided visualization. I'd like you to imagine that you walk outside your home or your apartment. You have no shoes on, and you need to go to the store, but all the ground is covered in thorns. So one option for us is that we patch over the path that we need to walk from our house to the grocery. So we do that, we work diligently, we finally make it to the grocery store unscathed from the thorns. We're very happy when we get there. We did it. We're at the grocery store, and then we go and we do our shopping, we do all the things that we need to. Very content. And then we come out of the grocery store, and now we need to go to the post office to mail something. So now we need to patch the ground from the grocery store to the post office, right? So we do that. We work hard, diligently. We patch the ground there. We get to the post office. We made it. We do what we have to do at the post office. And now what? Now we have to go drop something off at our friend's house. And so we patch the ground there. This idea of patching the ground is an analogy of how we seek happiness, right? External. If I could only get to the grocery store, then everything would be okay. And we patch the ground and we get there. But then we're there and then something else comes up. If I could only get to the post office, then everything would be okay. And we patch the ground and we get there. But then something else comes up. And we do this over and over and over. There is another option. Instead of patching the ground to where we need to go, we can patch our feet. We can protect our feet that way. Wherever we need to go, whatever we need to do, whatever situation we find ourselves in, we can be protected. This is akin of internal happiness, right? Working on our mind, working on our internal happiness. So that way, even though we continue to strive to change our external conditions, we feel secure and happy in whatever comes our way. Instead of the activity being the cause of our happiness, our mind, our happy mind, causes the activity to be enjoyable. So just think about that for a little while. Allow yourself to focus on this. Internalize it. And we can make a commitment right here to ourselves that we are going to start to dedicate more time to working on our internal happiness than we had previously. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, so that was what I would consider to be a kind of full meditation where we did the breathing relaxation part, right? And then we kind of used our more relaxed mind. Maybe it's still kind of a little all over the place, but it's a little more relaxed. And so we can look at something a little more clearly. And so we're choosing to look at internal versus external happiness. So I've always liked this analogy of like patching the ground versus patching our feet. So we can think about meditation, right? Working on breathing meditation as patching our feet, right? That way we start to cultivate this this belief that we can be happy, right? We have it within us, right? We have this internal happiness. We can access it, right? That way, while we're looking to do all the wonderful things that we want to do with our life, we're going to be happy in the journey doing it, right? Because we have this kind of rock internal happiness. Does that sound good? Was that helpful? Hopefully it was enjoyable. If you did enjoy this or found it to be thought-provoking or interesting, Carol, thanks, Keith. Another wonderful class. You made me happy. Thank you. That means a lot to me. You guys dedicating so much of your time to being here each week is so meaningful to me. I couldn't do this without you guys, and I very much enjoy teaching meditation. This has been a really cool. I think I'm coming up on a year anniversary of this YouTube channel. So this has been great, and I couldn't have done this without you guys. Thank you so much. This class is really helpful. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. So come back. We do this every week. Occasionally I have to take a week off for, personal reasons or whatever. Valerie, first class, what a joy. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Please definitely come back if you did enjoy it, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It'll, if nothing else, remind you, hey, it's Wednesday, let's meditate. And I also, if you're interested, I do one-on-one classes like over Zoom. which is really good for focusing on something that's particular to you. Everyone has different things they want to try to use meditation to help them with. So this is kind of like a catch-all general session where I just pick whatever. But the one-on-one sessions are really good if we want to focus in on something personal for you guys. So if that is something that you're interested in, you can just email me. I'll put my email in the chat right now. It's keith@meditationbreaks.com. Just email me and we'll find a time and a scenario that works for you to work on stuff. Okay. Oh my God, I gotta catch up. Nancy, something to look forward to every week. Thank you, Nancy. Nancy is a regular. Can't wait to attend next session. Thank you for being here. Loved the analogy. It clicked with me. That's what we're after, Randy. And look, that meditation teachers, they love analogies, right? Because everybody clicks with a different one. So maybe you're like, I don't know, it's a little nebulous right here. Maybe something else we're gonna talk about is gonna really click. But I'm glad that went well for you. Jason, thank you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Kavitha, really looking forward to next week. Have a good rest of the week, everyone. Kavitha, thank you. It's been wonderful to have you here the last couple of weeks. You've been such a wonderful participant, such wonderful comments and thoughtful questions. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Good luck meditating. And I will see you next Wednesday. We're gonna do a gratitude, a class on gratitude next week. It's my favorite topic to teach. Right, I teach it probably more often. Maybe a bunch of you have, however, already experienced it. But we seem like we have a lot of new people lately, so I want to bring it back. But we're gonna do a gratitude meditation, my favorite topic. It's gonna be great. Okay, thank you again, and I'll see you next Wednesday.